afternoon. Thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. 5 years ago, experts estimated that there were slightly over 152,000 Vermonters age 60 or older. More recently, the number of that demographic has been put closer to 183,000. That's a significant number when you consider the last census put Vermont's population at around 647,000, which means older Vermonters are about 1/3 of all of Vermonters. We've talked many times on our program about making Vermont a livable place to age in place, as the saying goes. One of the many efforts to do so and give power to the people is the Older Vermonters Caucus, which was started by our guest today. Dan Noyes is the representative from the 2nd Lamoille District, which encompasses Wolcott, Belvedere, Johnson, and Hyde Park. He served in the Vermont legislature since 2016. Welcome back to Across the Fence.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're always happy to have you. And so you co-organized the Older Vermonters Caucus with State Rep from Waterbury, Teresa Wood.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about how that came about?
Sure. So when I first started in the legislature, I was hearing about all these other caucuses, the Workers' Caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Rural Caucus, and I was like, you know, there's a lot of issues that we talk about in the Human Services Committee that pertain to older Vermonters that I think are important for my colleagues to really hear about. And when you are in committee in the legislature, you're really focusing on the issues that are before that committee, whether it's transportation or commerce, you know, those are kind of your focus. And so I, just was thinking we should have an Older Vermonters Caucus because there's so many issues that we're talking about in the Human Services Committee. So I just stood up on the floor and I basically said, next Wednesday at noon, we're going to have the Older Vermonters Caucus is going to meet, and anyone who would like to join us is welcome to join us. And it took off from there.
Great. For somebody who isn't as knowledgeable about the going-ons under the Golden Dome, tell me what a caucus is. What's the political impact of that?
Yeah, so a caucus is basically a group of people that get together and talk about specific issues. And I had to look it up last night, and I was like, I wonder, where this word actually comes from. And so I Googled it, of course, and saw that it's from the Latin word drinking vessel. And I think that is pretty appropriate because, you think about it's a way to learn about the issues. It's like, how do we all work together and kind of move a particular topic forward in the legislature. There's just so much going on. I thought it would be good to, focus on the needs of older Vermonters because it does cross so many of the different committees of jurisdiction, whether it's transportation or housing or healthcare. So I wanted to make sure that those issues were brought up and that people could understand and ask questions about how does it fit into the work that they're doing.
And you kind of already touched on the wide-spanning range of topics that older Vermonters interact with, especially when you're talking about committees. But what kind of topics do you discuss?
So, it varies. Every week I kind of set up a different topic. I have somebody come in, maybe we'll talk about Meals on Wheels, or we'll talk about nursing homes or res care, or we'll even sometimes get into, more technical, like the budget and what's the proposed budget coming out, how does that help older Vermonters, or where could we make sure that there is additional funding needed so that people have access to services. With the overall goal of kind of people working together and understanding what the issues are, the bigger issues. So I'll just bring in different participants, whether they're advocates or, people working to try to figure out how to make Vermont the best place to age in.
Sure, and we talked about at the beginning about 183,000 people 60 years and older in Vermont. And so is 60 years kind of the cutoff for what makes an older Vermonter, or is it a little bit more up in the air?
Yeah, there's no particular number. I see some demographics that really look at like 55 and older, and then other ones are 60 and some are 65. I just try to think about it more of just how do we prepare Vermont so that when someone does need access to services, or when they're getting to a point in life that they're retiring, Vermont's thinking about what their needs are and how they can continue to thrive and have a great place to grow old.
Absolutely. And who can attend these caucuses?
So anybody, just like the legislature, it's open to the public. Anybody can come in and participate in our state government, and I make sure the caucus is the same. So if somebody wanted to come down to Montpelier and come to our caucus meeting, they're absolutely welcome to do so in person. Yeah, we just invite people in. And, you know, I'm also interested in hearing from people about you know, what topics they might be interested in, or what concerns they have. They're welcome to reach out to me. But also, importantly, if somebody's happens to be talking to their representative or their senator, you know, having them participate in the caucus is also really important, to have other legislators there. So, you know, maybe come down to Montpelier and invite your rep or your senator to go there with you.
Sure. And do you have to go to Montpelier to attend?
No, I live stream them all on YouTube, so you can just go right onto YouTube and Google, or in the search bar, put in
Sure.
Older Vermonters Caucus, and it will come up. And then there's a couple little tabs at the top. You want to go to live, and that has all the recordings of all the past ones. And then it will also have that particular one, if you happen to catch it when we're live streaming, but then it's on there. As long as YouTube keeps it up there.
Great. And you said it was pretty consistent. Do you try and have it at the same day and time?
Yeah, you know, I'm always trying to get more participation, and everyone is so busy in Montpelier. I've done it Wednesday at noon, and, you know, I may try to move it around a little bit this year, but I'm going to start off Wednesday at noon and then see what participation looks like. You're always competing with other caucuses, other group meetings.
A lunch, maybe.
lunch meetings. And then once you get close to town meeting day, when we have like a lot of budget presentations, those sometimes take place at noon. So I'll cancel it because everyone, and as well as I, want to hear the budget presentations. So, you know, around town meeting, it gets canceled. Then towards the end of the session, when things really get busy, it's usually when we end it. But
Sure.
I'll get it started coming up here.
Great. And when we were talking at the beginning about a couple demographics, but what are some important numbers to know when we're talking about older Vermonters?
Yeah, so since 2000, the number of Vermonters 60 years and older has increased by 80%, while the number of Vermonters under 20 has decreased by 17%. So it's definitely a growing population, and it's you know, older Vermonters, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot more people that are even aging to 100 years old. I was listening to this great story on New Year's Day. WBUR ran this, and they said half of the 5-year-olds in America today can expect to live to 100 years old. And I was just like, wow, like that's a lot of, you know, we always, when I meet someone who's 100 years old, it's, you know, it stands out because there's not enough. But if half of the people are going to live to 100, that's pretty amazing. And, you know, some other numbers that really kind of stood out to me, you know, Vermont ranks 4th in volunteerism of people over the age of 65. And so I always think about what a great thing as you age to be able to have access to volunteer opportunities, whether it's at your local senior center, delivering Meals on Wheels, or wherever. But it's nice to see that Vermont, people are engaged and people
Sure.
are living longer and really finding joy in helping other people. So I thought that was a great number, and something Vermont should be proud of.
Absolutely, yeah, something to build on too.
Exactly. So just another one that is an interesting number, but just over 90,000 of the homes in Vermont are owned by people over 65. And so that's 48% of the houses in Vermont. And so when we think about the future and we think about our housing crisis that we have here, you know, one of the things that we talk about in the caucus is housing and access to housing. And with 48% of the houses being owned by people who are, maybe looking to downsize. Maybe their families, they're in a 4-bedroom house and there's only 2 people living there now. So that's something that, we may be able to work on in this upcoming session around access to age-specific housing in rural parts of our state, which in turn, if people can stay in their communities where their connections are, where their families are, they may move, and that would possibly open up housing stock in more rural parts of our state.
Sure. And we're filming this before the session begins, but the session is beginning on January 8th.
Yep.
And so you guys are already hard at work. And in the early days, I know a lot of legislation is still kind of coming together, but how much of it do you think is having an impact on older Vermonters?
Yeah, so, there's a bunch of bills that are going to come into play in this session that I've been working on. There's a group of us that have been meeting around Age Strong Vermont, which is some legislation that we passed a few years ago, and we developed this multi-sector plan for aging well. And we're really looking at how do we implement the goals of that plan. So by maybe Vermont's one of the states that doesn't have a commission on aging, and maybe we should really be thinking about what that looks like and how can we have input across state government to implement the goals of Age Strong. And a commission may be a really good way to do it, and at least be able to work with the legislature, with the public, and with all of the agencies that are providing services to kind of bring everybody together in one central thought process. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. I appreciate it. Thanks
Absolutely.
for having me.
And every session of the Older Vermonters Caucus is archived on YouTube, so you can simply search Older Vermonters Caucus, and it'll take you right to their channel. And if you'd like to attend the caucus happening on January 22nd, you can do so by reaching out to Representative Noyes, and he'll be happy to help you out. And that takes care of Across the Fence for today. My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.